Now, Washington mornings on the Mall. And AM 630. WMAL.
637 on WMAL. Happy Tuesday morning. It's your Brian Wilson back in the house this morning. Greg Martin joins us now. He's Executive Director of Communications for General Motors. And we often talk about GM on the show as it pertains to the bailout, the auto bailout. And the Chevy Volt comes up as a topic from time to time on this program as well. Greg, good morning. Thanks for coming on the show.
Good morning, Brian and Brian. Thanks for having me.
All right, so what is the state of GM right now? How much government money is still inside of General Motors right now?
So they own still about a 26% stake in the company. When they decide to exit is anybody's guess. But since the bailout, we've shown some remarkable progress, I think, by most objective measures. I mean, we've had 8 consecutive quarters of profitability. We're back to being the number one car maker in the world. We're number one in China, which a lot of companies would love to have that position. And then around the world, Chevy set a sales record for the first quarter of nearly 1.2 billion cars sold. So we're heading in the right direction. I don't think any of us think that our job's done yet, but we're headed in a good, strong direction, and we're going to try to assert some leadership and get the company back to where it was once a company that America could be proud of.
Well, you say sales are up, and congratulations on that. I think everybody, there's not many people out there who want to see GM fail, of course. But what about the Chevy Volt? Because a lot of people look at the Chevy Volt and they say, well, I'll tell you what Mitt Romney had to say about it. He says it's an idea whose time has not yet come. And a lot of people sort of associate the Chevy Volt with the Obama administration's attempts to go green. Are we being forced to take the Chevy Volt, which is a car that hasn't shown a tremendous amount of market appeal?
Nobody's forcing anybody to buy the Chevy Volt. In fact, it's ironic. If you go to a Chevy dealership next to the Volt, you're going to see a Corvette with nearly 500 horsepower next to a Camaro, and next to the Chevy Traverse if you're a family of 5 but want to have less fun. So, we're building cars for different purposes and different needs. I think if you could go back and rewind the tape, those same questions were posed to the microwave and cell phones and personal computers. And listen, I think if you were to go outside the prism of Washington, I mean, your audience are pretty smart people, and I don't think we're giving the consumers enough credit. I think they can separate the political theater from what is really an American technical achievement that should be recognized. This is not a German car. It's not a Japanese or Korean car. It's technology that was developed here in America.
All right, but does it make any sense? I mean, when I look at the Volt, I say, well, it's an interesting idea, but then I look at the cost of the Chevy Volt, and I say, okay, that's what, $40,000, $45,000 with a few little extras thrown in. And I look at the cost of a gasoline-powered car that does the same thing, has the same kind of accessories, and so we're talking about anywhere between a $10,000 and $15,000 difference. You have to save a lot of money over time to make up that $10,000 or $15,000. And I've seen some studies that suggest that, in fact, it can be more expensive to operate an electric car than to operate a gas car.
I think these are all good questions. Again, same questions from an overall economic standpoint that were applied to other new technologies that ultimately, as you know, the price came down. I think what we're looking at is a much more long-term play in terms of what the technology represents and how it can be applied to different degrees across different product lines, the potential to export this American technology to other countries. And we're looking at years. So I think it's really hard to take a look within the first 2 years. Again, fair and legitimate questions. But if you look back, one of the things that we always got hit hard was a failure of leadership, a failure of innovation and imagination. Here we're exercising in this case. So I think it's going to take a while to see how this plays out, but it's good to be first to market on this.
I can tell you that I own a Chevy Traverse, and I love it. I think it's a great car. I do have a question for you, though, when it comes to how much the government has in GM stock. What is the percentage of stock that is owned by the federal government right now?
26%.
Would GM want the federal government to sell that stock? Would they prefer that to happen, or is it the status quo fine with General Motors at this point?
Well, I think once the status quo gets fine, I think we're in trouble. I think that's what got us in trouble in the first place. So I think we want to get back to being a good American car company that builds cars. It'd be nice to get out of and I think what most people recognize are the politics of an election year. So it's Treasury's call, and when we're when they're ready to exit, we'll help them.
Are there any conversations? I mean, how does it work? Is there any kind of regular communication with the Treasury Department and GM, or is the Treasury Department just like every other shareholder?
They're like every other shareholder. There's no real conversation on any frequent basis. I mean, we'll have a annual meeting coming up in June, and they'll have representation there, and they'll have processes to have their voice heard, but in that respect, they're just like any other shareholder. Now, I know that probably be treated with some skepticism, but they've been, to their credit and to the administration, I should note, the administration prior to the current one, both have been true to their word to let us run our business and make the commercial decisions we need to get this company back on track.
Do you think anything would change much? Would there be drastic changes if there was a new administration this time next year?
I think with any change in administration, that's the beauty of this country. Every 4 years, the American public gets to decide which direction the company wants to go into. So sure, I think the company and others would expect significant change if there's a change in administrations.
By the way, Neiman's not the only one who drives a Chevy, but in my particular case, I think you got it right in 1969, because I drive a 1969 Chevrolet C10. And it's still going, baby. It's still going.
Well, that was a great year. I think some of the most beautiful and iconic Corvettes came out during that year, and you should see what we have in the design studio. It'll just knock your socks off. But that's great to hear that truck still running.
It's still running good, yeah.
All right, last question before I let you go. Now, GM is said to be adding 600 dealerships to China.
Yeah.
Why China? Is that where you see the growth? And, what about here in the United States of America?
Well, anybody that saw those opening ceremonies for the Olympics know there's a lot of people over there, and they want to buy cars, and they're developing a middle class. When you look at the U.S. and Europe, and those are both very mature markets, so there's not a lot of growth opportunity with the level of competition in these markets, but there's a lot of blue sky in China. And again, people will go back and look at the previous leadership of GM and what they did right and what they did wrong. But I think under the category of doing things right, they saw the potential of the China market a long time ago, so they established a beachhead, and now we're the number one automaker over there. So people are really seeing some terrific...
Let me ask you this, though. Is it easier to do business in China than it is here in the United States these days?
Well, I'll tell you what, they have their own set of challenges, if you will. I mean, again, the markets are different in terms of their regulatory requirements and how you interact with, within China. You have to have a level of joint venture if you want to do business over there. So I would say they have their unique set of complexities, if you will.
But are your profit margins higher in China than they are in the United States?
They're very good in China, and the important thing to note about China is those are profits that are coming back to the U.S.
Right.
Instead of the other way around. So
all right,
we're over there.
Greg, we're out of time. Thanks very much for coming on. We always appreciate it.